Paper looks quite interesting.
Hmm. Thanks.
Have you been doing it for a long time?
Yeah.
Nice.
Hi, welcome to the Penguin Post newspaper for kids. Today we are interviewing David Luther. He studies forests, animals that are threatened, and conservation. That's so cool. Let's ask him some questions. Could you please tell us more about your work in the Amazon rainforest?
Yeah, of course. I do several things in the Amazon rainforest. Most of what I've done has been studying the birds in the Amazon rainforest to better understand their behavior, about their bird song, especially, but also what they eat and what they do and why they do it. And then more recently, I've also been studying how forest fragmentation. So when people cut what was a big continuous forest, like in the picture back here, and cut it into smaller pieces for logging or because they want to clear the land for cows or something, what happens to the species that stay in those small fragments or pieces of forest that are left? And I do that for a lot of different animals, but birds especially.
Do you know what types of trees are good to plant in different climate zones?
Uh, I know some general ideas. Most of what's best to plant is what's native to that area. So if you happen to be in the middle of the Amazon in Brazil, species native to that area are best. And if you're in Northern California, it's going to be oak trees or redwoods or cedar, depending, where you are exactly. So it really depends on what's locally abundant and an important species in that area.
Um, we learned that mangrove forests are very special. Can you tell us more about them and how we can help protect them?
Yeah, mangrove forests are amazing, I think at least. They are very special. They, in some ways, are like salt marshes that we have here in the higher latitudes on our coasts. It's at the interface of the land and the sea and the ocean, basically. But mangroves are tropical um, instead of being up at the higher latitudes like the salt marshes. And they're these really interesting forests that don't have a lot of species in them, but the species that are there are really well adapted to live in this salty water environment. Um, but they do, besides the unique species that live in them, they also are really useful for a lot of environmental services. Like they help stop waves from coming and eroding the shore. They can even, things like tsunamis, tidal waves, they can help slow them down so they don't hit the land. And hurt establishments or other habitat types that are inland. They also trap a lot of sediments and pollution that come downriver from areas where people live. So those things don't go out to the sea and pollute the coral reefs. And then one of my favorite things they do is for a lot of the sea animals, especially fish, but also crabs and other things, they're kind of like a little nursery where a lot of them will go there to make their babies and raise them when they're young. And then they'll go back out to sea when they're adult and more mature. In terms of how to best protect them, that's a great question because the mangroves around the world are not doing very well. People have cut them down a lot. Uh, Sometimes because resorts or people's homes, they want an oceanside view and the mangroves are in the way. So they cut them down to get a better view. Although more and more recently, especially well, in Central America, but I think in more so even in Asia, it's for shrimp farms, little cocktail shrimp. They cut down huge patches of forest and they make ponds to grow their shrimp in. Does that
How do
answer your
you
question?
take care of these trees and how can we learn more?
About the mangrove trees or any trees?
The mangrove
Oh,
tree.
yeah, about the mangrove trees. That's a great question. Well, there are a lot of websites and international organizations dedicated to preserving those mangroves and have a lot of good information about them. Because globally, this is seen as a big problem. If the mangroves go away, all of those countries that are in the tropics that have oceanfront property are going to have some problems. Their land is going to start to erode out to sea with sea levels rising now also because of climate change. It's going to be even more of a problem. And as you might or might not know, a lot of the big cities in the world are right on the coast, right? Where people have set up their biggest cities like New York in the United States, or even Washington, D.C., which is inland a little bit, but on a river that's on a tidal floodplain, or San Francisco. And if you have salt marshes or mangroves in tropical places, like in, say, Panama City in the tropics, those mangroves can help buffer or protect the cities a little bit if they're in between the ocean and the city.
Have you gone to the Amazon rainforest? What's it like?
I have several times. I've spent a couple years in the Amazon rainforest, and it is amazing. If you like animals or lots of different types of plants and biodiversity, it's the best place on the planet because every step you take, there might be some new species of bird, spider, monkey that you've never seen before. And I lived in this one place in the Amazon in Ecuador for a whole year, the exact same place. And every day I'd walk the same trails. I was a tourist guide, so taking people on their vacations for like a week. Every day I saw new animals. Every single day there was something new, even though it was the exact same trail. Like imagine walking from your home to school every day, the exact same sidewalk, but every single day there'd be a new bird, a new monkey, a new lizard, a new something along the way, which made it really fun and exciting. Um, but it, so what is it like though? It's really wet. If you're in the eastern or yeah, the western Amazon, like so say Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, there's a wet season and there's a wetter season. It's always raining. If you're in the eastern, northern, and southern part of the Amazon, there's more of a wet season and a dry season. And the dry season, it still rains almost every day, but only a little bit, like just a little afternoon shower for 15 minutes or something. And then in the wet season, it rains a lot every day.
Mm.
It's wet and green is the best description. Good question.
Last year, there were many fires in the Amazon rainforest that were started by people. How do you think people can live in harmony with nature and animals? People need space to grow their vegetables and crops, and so they cut down the forest. How can we balance this?
That is an amazing big question. I'll do my best. It's a global issue, right? Whether it's the Amazon or Kansas or Poland or anywhere else in the world, people have to balance having some nature and having enough food to eat, right? And these things don't actually have to be in contrast with each other, but historically they have been, where people have decided we need more food, so we're just going to take more land to grow it. But now, actually, with better technology, people don't have to take more land to grow more food. There are all sorts of new ways that we can use the existing land to grow our food better. There are whole international commissions looking at exactly this problem. I mean, our government in the US also, there's whole teams that look at this, but there's international organizations also focused on this. If you really want to know a lot of details, I can provide them. I only know the surface level of it, but specific to the Amazon, almost all of those fires, well, I shouldn't say all, many of those fires were intentionally set by farmers so that they could clear out the Amazon so they could grow more soybeans or have more cows on the land. That's the majority of it. And the cows are so that, you know, for people that eat beef around the world. Some of it comes to the US, a lot of it goes to China, so, and then obviously Brazilians and other countries eat them as well. Most of the soybeans also go to feeding the cattle or pigs or some other domestic animal. Um, so some of it could be if people were to shift diets and wanted to shift their diets, there wouldn't be a need for it if less people were to eat things like beef, there would be less reason to cut down the rainforest. While beef is yummy, it is not a necessity, right? There's other foods we could eat too.
I'm working on making a game that teaches players about what trees are good for drawing down carbon to plant in various regions, like tropical, desert, temperate, cold, and many others, while also meeting the needs of people living there. What would you recommend I should put in my game?
Oh, wow. That sounds awesome. Can I play it with you someday? That sounds like a really cool game. I don't know. I do not know a lot about which trees draw more carbon than others. It's a really important question, and I know there are scientists that know the answer. I'm just not one of them, honestly. I've read that mangroves store a lot of carbon and they're wonderful for that. And I've read that the tropics are excellent for this. So a lot of the tropical trees definitely are too. I think, although you should probably talk to a scientist that really knows more about it, but I think the trees that grow the fastest and the most are going to absorb more carbon more quickly. So in the tropics, they just grow really fast compared to like a boreal forest, like say up in Canada or Russia or Alaska, which is also a wonderful forest and it stores a lot of carbon. It doesn't absorb as much carbon because it's a short, only a few months really where they're taking in a lot of carbon dioxide. I don't think they take it in. But that sounds really cool. Um, Sorry, I don't have a better answer on that one.
Thank you so much for joining us. We loved interviewing you. Bye.
Thank you for your time and wonderful work with your program here. I enjoyed reading your newsletter and I look forward to reading more. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.